The Dragon Age series was previously one of my top 5 video game franchises of all time, standing alongside the likes of Mass Effect, Fallout, and The Elder Scrolls. But with the release of Dragon Age The Veilguard, I can't help but notice that pretty much everything I once loved about this franchise has been completely stripped out and cast into the garbage bin. And one of the most unforgivable sins of The Veilguard's many, many sins is its treatment of the lore. It wasn't enough for the writers of The Veilguard to simply fill in the blanks and build upon the established lore of the previous games. No. They had to make this game the penultimate Dragon Age story by retconning and overwriting many facts about Thedas that we learned in Origins, Dragon Age 2, and Inquisition. In this video, we're going to explore the death of Dragon Age as a franchise and how the writers of this game have absolutely butchered the established lore. So without further ado, let's buckle up, grab some iced coffee, and dive headfirst into the storm. One of the most infuriating aspects of Dragon Age The Veilguard's lore is BioWare's treatment of Southern Thedas, aka the general setting of the first 3 Dragon Age games. Southern Thedas encompasses nations such as Ferelden, Orlais, and the Free Marches, which is the location of Kirkwall. It's been known since the end of the Trespasser DLC in Inquisition that the next Dragon Age game would be set in Northern Thedas, away from the nations we explored in the first 3 games. But it wasn't enough for the writers to simply move their story to a new region. No, they also had to destroy the southern regions off-screen in a series of codex entries. Throughout the story, Rook will receive a series of letters from the Inquisitor detailing the happenings in southern Thedas. After the withdrawal of the Grey Wardens to Weishaupt, Ferelden, Orlais, and the rest of southern Thedas are being ripped apart by the Blight, as well as the rebel factions, the Venatori, and the Antom. So how is Ferelden doing? Let's hear the details from the Inquisitor. Much that we thought certain has turned out to be only wishful thinking, and every day we find ourselves pushed to the limits. The Darkspawn, until now little more than a trickle, have become a flood, and we've been forced to abandon villages and settlements all across southern Ferelden. Already the Darkspawn have claimed Redcliffe, and the shores of Lake Calenhad rife with the Blight's corruption. Our land sickens and dies, and I fear that whoever among Ferelden's people live through this relentless assault will starve to death instead. Redcliffe is a town we visit in both Dragon Age Origins and Inquisition. The hero of Ferelden repelled a zombie attack led by Arl Eamon's demon-possessed son Connor, and the Inquisitor thwarted Magister Alexius's plans to give the town over to Corypheus. Both of these outcomes are of course dependent on the player's choices as well. But in Dragon Age The Veilguard, the town has been completely destroyed by the Darkspawn off-screen in a codex entry, essentially rendering the actions of the hero of Ferelden and the Inquisitor pointless. The Inquisitor goes on to tell us about Denerim, the capital of Ferelden. Much of Denerim has been consumed, and what remains is kept free of Darkspawn only through the most vigilant efforts of those who still brave the streets. Apparently, the Dwarven capital is also on the brink of collapse. Already, I heard reports of Orzammar under siege, the Darkspawn advancing to its very gates, erasing all the gains that the Wardens and Dwarves made together. But it's not just Ferelden that has been thrown into chaos. The neighboring nation of Orlais, which we visit during Dragon Age Inquisition, has also been plunged into war thanks to the Venatori. In another series of letters, the Inquisitor reports to Rook, "Unfortunately, I send grim tidings. In Orlais, a splinter faction of the nobility has made common cause with the Venatori and launched an assault on both the royal forces of Orlais and the border keeps of Ferelden. The Venatori and the Orlesian royal armies clash daily in Orlais. Val Royeaux is now under control of the rebels, and from there, the Venatori launches attacks as far east as Kirkwall. Yet Orlais still refused to join us." Now, obviously, BioWare can do whatever they want with Dragon Age. It's their intellectual property, and they have free reign to write it how they want to. But as a longtime fan of this series, who's sunk hundreds of hours into the first 3 games, BioWare's treatment of Southern Thedas feels like a slap in the face. It wasn't enough for the writers to just shift the focus of the story to another region in Thedas. They had to go ahead and destroy the places we went in previous Dragon Age games, primarily Ferelden and Orlais. They could have just remained silent on the facts on the ground, but instead they chose to decimate these regions in codex entries no less, condemning the peoples of Ferelden and Orlais to death at the hands of the Darkspawn, starvation, or rebel armies. This is reminiscent of the implied destruction of New Vegas at the end of Fallout Season 1. Many Fallout fans, myself included, felt that this was a slap in the face because it effectively rendered our actions in Fallout New Vegas meaningless. Who cares who we decided to put in charge of the Mojave if the city would inevitably be destroyed in a TV show? And who cares if we saved Redcliffe in Origins, or defeated the Archdemon in Denerim, or selected the new ruler of Orlais, if all of these places would just get wiped out in a codex entry in Dragon Age The Veilguard? The level of disrespect is over 9,000.
It's over 9,000! What, 9,000?
But the treatment of southern Thedas is just the tip of the iceberg. Let's talk about how BioWare made the Evanuris the source of every single problem that ever happened in Thedas. Let's start off with the Blight. In previous Dragon Age games, it was believed that the origin of the Blight stemmed from the ancient Tevinter Magisters. These Magisters broke into the Golden City, aka the seat of the Maker, and were punished with Darkspawn corruption as a result. Well, this turns out not to be true at all, because in the Veilguard, we discover that the Blight actually originated from the Evanuris, specifically Gillinane. Just a quick edit here. As I was going through my footage, Solus does mention that the Magisters unleashed a portion of the Blight when they breached the Fade. However, their corruption was not the result of punishment by the Maker, as we previously believed, which is why Harding has a crisis of faith over the chant of light apparently being wrong. So again, it is still a retcon. Oh, and what about the old gods, who were worshipped by ancient Tevinter and embodied in the form of archdemons? Well, they're actually not gods at all, but tools of the Evanuris. This is only the beginning, though. In the Descent DLC of Dragon Age Inquisition, we learn of the existence of the Titans in the deepest depths of the Dwarven Deep Roads. These mysterious beings are the source of lyrium, a magical resource mined by the dwarves. The Titans were effectively wiped out, but we didn't know who was responsible. Well, in Dragon Age The Veilguard, we learned the Evanuris, specifically Solus, was responsible for the death of the Titans. Oh, and what about Andraste, aka Dragon Age Jesus, the bride of the Maker and revered figure of the Chantry faith, whose ashes can literally cure ailments, as we saw with Arl Eamon in Dragon Age Origins? Well, turns out she was actually a vessel of Mythal, one of the Evanuris. In Dragon Age The Veilguard, if you ask any question about lore, the answer is most likely the Evanuris did it. Literally every problem that's ever existed in Thedas can be linked back to the Evanuris now. What really bothers me about this, other than the feeling that blaming everything on the Evanuris comes across as lazy and convenient, is that it wasn't enough for the writers to simply fill in the blanks and build upon the lore of previous Dragon Age games. No, they had to go ahead and say, remember all that lore you learned in Origins, DA2, and Inquisition? Well, all of that lore is actually incorrect, and the real lore is in our game. It just comes across as arrogant, sloppy, and disrespectful. But the hits don't stop there. Let's talk about the secret ending to Dragon Age The Veilguard. If you complete a series of mysterious orb puzzles, you'll be treated to a hidden post-credits scene that suggests many past events in Thedas were actually guided by a shadowy group called the Executors. According to the Dragon Age wiki, the Executors, also referred to as those across the sea, are a shadowy group that came into contact with the Inquisition during the turmoil of the Breach. But this new secret ending in the Veilguard suggests the Executors were an Illuminati-tier group manipulating major events of Thedas from the shadows. Did BioWare hire Alex Jones to write this part of the game?
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay!
The first suggestion is that they guided Loghain to do his thing during Dragon Age Origins. The idea that Loghain wasn't just a flawed, opportunistic man seeking to take over Ferelden, but rather an agent of the Illuminati, kinda undermines what made him such an interesting villain. Loghain was not an evil man outright, but he was an arrogant opportunist who believed he could run Ferelden better on his own. He saw King Kalen as an inexperienced child cosplaying at war, but as an experienced and decorated general, Loghain thought he was the right man to lead Ferelden to victory against the Darkspawn, and he sought to achieve this goal by any means necessary, including poisoning political rivals, declaring the Grey Wardens enemies of the state, imprisoning his own daughter, and allying with shady figures like Rendon Howe and a group of Tevinter slavers. So the idea that Loghain was acting on behalf of some half-baked Illuminati group located across the sea is just so fucking cringe. The secret ending also suggests that the Executors somehow whispered into Bartrand's mind in Dragon Age 2. So I guess they manipulated this random dwarven merchant into bringing the red lyrium idol into Kirkwall, which I guess contributed to the Mage-Templar conflict because Bartrand sold red lyrium to Meredith, leader of the Templars. And at the end of Dragon Age 2, it's implied that Meredith was driven insane by red lyrium. So maybe she wouldn't have persecuted the mages to such an extreme degree if it weren't for that. But for what purpose are the Illuminati Executors doing all this shit? It seems like a potential teaser for a villain faction in future games, but to me, it just comes across as lame, stupid, and a needless retcon of past Dragon Age games. So, what have we learned today, folks? If anything bad ever happens in Thedas, it was either the Evanuris or the Illuminati. Dragon Age is so over, bro. At this point, Dragon Age is dead to me as a franchise. I'll still enjoy the first 3 games and make content on them, but Veilguard is such a bastardization that I'm not excited for anything BioWare cooks up with this series moving forward because they've burnt it all to the ground anyway. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe to Big Dant Gaming for more Dragon Age and RPG videos. Big shout out to all the channel members for supporting my content. Until next time, this has been Big Dan. I should go.